As a child growing up in the 70s and particularly the 80s, I remember hearing about divorce, and I know anytime my parents would fight, I was afraid, oh no, are they going to get divorced? I'm thinking back to my childhood friends at that time, and I don't know of anybody who had divorced. Maybe there was one friend now that I'm thinking about it. It was sort of this growing problem in the 80s, and we both grew up in the Catholic Church, and divorce is what's the word for it? It's not.
Well, it was kind of not sanctioned by
most. If you can get an annulment, but a divorce is.
Yeah, that was always weird to me. How you get annulment, but you couldn't get a divorce.
It's not allowed.
Well, I know for myself that it was not talked about. It wasn't good for us to hang around with somebody who came from a divorced family. I had what I consider a good friend lived across the street, and there was always kind of like, say, a black cloud over that family because they were the parents that they were. He had two parents there, but one of them was divorced, I think, out of it. And so it just left a bad taste in my mouth too, because my parents didn't really approve of him as a friend, and he was my best friend. We had a great.
Do you remember having doubts about this kid,
or was myself?
Yes, yourself.
No,
it was just you just felt judged.
Well, I noticed my mom would avoid. She would not want to invite him for dinner. She would still do it at some point, but you could just tell by the way her tone of voice and that it wasn't. She didn't really like.
And you were a pretty young child when he was your best friend.
Yeah.
Do you remember being aware of the fact that he had a divorced parent, or is that something you reflected back on as you got older?
He also had a father that was rather abusive. Mm-hmm. So I always felt sorry for him that way. And like I said, he was such a neat kid, and he was a creative one. He was always the things we'd play, he would come up with stuff that was so off the chart and off the wall, but it was so much fun. It didn't faze me. I didn't really know it, but only from later on, as I grew older, started to realize some of the things that my parents would do that would make it more obvious.
Because he moved away when you were pretty young.
Yeah.
So at the time you weren't aware.
No.
It was not made.
Well, there was a list of people we didn't deal with, and divorced. I hate to say it, but Jewish people were not in our list of being, and of course the publics, and that was another thing. This guy was talking about went to the public school versus the Catholic school. So anyway.
And you grew up in the 50s and 60s, so a different generation almost really than I did when, there were TV shows with divorce.
Well, I remember, and I don't know if she was, I think most of the time if they were single, it was a widow kind of thing. For women, I don't remember if there were any divorced. Probably couldn't even say it on TV when I was a kid.
And yet mom and dad couldn't sleep in the same bed, though.
On TV, yeah. Yeah, that always cracked me up.
Kind of ironic, isn't it?
Well, there was one point early on where they had to have one foot on the floor. They couldn't even, so anyway.
Yeah, that's going back in time with the TV. So Don and I are bringing you a series on divorce. We have never been divorced, either of us. We have had many friends and family members who've gotten divorced.
Yeah.
For a while, we almost felt like we were the curse. Become friends with us, and you will get divorced.
Well, and that makes me think about my sister, because she married a divorced man and was in my parents' realm. My mom's realm was she was excommunicated from the church and those rules, and my oldest brother had to come down and explained to my parents that they needed to go to this wedding.
Well, she obviously didn't get married in a Catholic church.
No.
If you've been divorced, you can't get
And
married in a
my
Catholic
mom
church.
wouldn't refuse to go. And anyway,
that was
just yeah,
how she was raised. So we've been around divorce. We don't have any experience, so we're going to be bringing you some experts on this.
So, hello, I'm Don.
And this is Gina.
With Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 22. Again, it's the beginning of a series about divorce and parenting. And we're going to explore more about it in just a few minutes, but let's first take a break for our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
And stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences. And we're back. So we'd like to share with you the series that we're beginning here today. We're introducing things today, but we want to tell you about what's to come.
Well, we have, first off, the next podcast after this one will be with Ashley Nicole Russell, who is a lawyer. She's a podcaster. She's an author. She's with Collaborative Law Practice here in the Carolinas.
And it was very fascinating, our conversation with her, talking about how in collaborative law it looks at things very differently than court-centered divorces, and how she's become certified in this. She's part of the association with this and has grown her practice around this from when she went into practice for herself from a young age, as she told us.
Well, and she goes around really advocating for changing divorce, how we see divorce, getting away from the stigmatism that's around divorce. And then, of course, we talked then after with Lori Grover. And she's a divorce mediator.
Yes, and so in the first podcast with Ashley Nicole, she talks about going to a lawyer versus a mediator when you're looking at having a divorce. And so it was great to talk with Lori and going over the details of what a mediator does in the involvement of the divorce and how different that looks.
And she's with Rhode Island Divorce Mediation Center in Cranston, Rhode Island. They say great conversation. She was fun to talk to. We had quite a long talk with her.
Yeah.
Because I like this idea of changing divorce because it just doesn't seem fair to that people cannot, if they just have found themselves in a place where they don't want to be together, to have to force them to stay together. Really, and what we talked a lot about was how it affects the family.
Yeah.
The kids
and
are
the
the
traditional,
ones that,
if you go through the court system, your lawyers are hired to pit, the other person is your enemy. And so it becomes a battle versus a collaboration of working out what's best for each person and really for the kids, right? We're talking about this in the context of parenting. I saw my brother and his former wife when they got divorced. It was a beautiful example of they put the kids first and the way they shared things.
Very amicable.
And I really think they might have gone through a mediator. I keep meaning to ask him. At the time, with divorce not on our radar, I didn't pay attention that much. It never occurred to me there were different ways to look at divorce. I've only seen what I've seen in the media, television and movies.
Well, and those on television, they tend to portray it as this vicious fight and this battle. And
what was that movie that came out in the probably early
Oh my God,
80s.
but there's
Kramer versus Kramer.
yeah.
Yeah, just the fight with the divorce and just how that affects kids. Some time ago, I remember hearing about a plan when a couple got divorced that instead of the kids going back and forth between the houses, that the parents did, so the kids could stay in one place. And I always thought, well, isn't that wonderful? It's the adults who couldn't, work out their differences or whatever, that they were the reason that the family was having to change and separate. And yet I could imagine the challenge of that as...
Well, actually, I asked, and I'm trying to think of who it was I talked to about that, and they said that it does work out okay at the beginning, but once you start getting into other relationships, where then it's how do you take your new wife and move into a different house back and forth and all that. So I guess it would work well
as a transition
initially, and then you have to work through it. Because I think we even talked with Laura about in the mediation factor, people that come back.
Yeah, I love that. Both of them said that down the road, if things change as the kids get older, as the dynamics change, that they can go back to the mediator and renegotiate things and relook at how things need to change.
And as dating, as they start reaching out and dating and possibly finding a new spouse, that changes the dynamic. And then whatever the agreement was, I think almost has to change, to be able to adapt to the new situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
just looking at it as a changing family dynamic. I know with the parenting classes we've done, we've had single parents reach out to us, both single parents from divorce or never having been married. And along that line, we have had parents who the one spouse is working overseas or travels so much with their job that one parent feels almost like a single parent in that the other partner is just not there present physically very often. Obviously, it's not the same as divorce, but it's also looking at this coming about parenting from the perspective of being that sole parent or being the primary one, depending on the situation. Obviously, things can get very complicated if there's more complex things involved, like abuse and neglect.
Yes.
Yet it's a topic that's important. There's statistics out there. We've printed some statistics since we
and
don't
to let
have
you know
any...
too that we have at least one parent at this point that is going to be coming on and talking about
Yes,
that has gone through that. And I also am working on. I've been talking. How this all got started was I came across this association about shared parenting.
Mm-hmm.
The National Shared Parenting.org, I think is what, and I'm working on right now, hoping to get someone from there to talk about what they do, because that's Lori comes from that she was a part of that. She's on the board, I believe, with that, and it's all about
shared parenting.
This being collaborative, working together to make so that a divorce isn't painful for the kids.
Right. So we started looking at it as a parenting perspective, but then realizing, touching on this subject of divorce, no matter it's the beginning stages of it or later stages, and how important it can be to have either a mediator and a collaborative attorney, how different that is from a typical attorney.
And looking at the statistics, I seem to remember one in there about parents that are dealing with more than one child that has anxiety disorders have a tendency to be high in divorce rates. Mm-hmm. And I can understand that because what we've gone through and how tense and the stress and everything that was involved with it, how it could tear a family apart. Mm-hmm. And I think about the couple that we both know that we knew through Scouts that had the two autistic children. And to me, when you have somebody that has autism, that's not something that, like with OCD, we can get them to a place of being managed in their life. But it's sometimes, not always, but a lot of times with autistic, it can be a lifelong.
Depending on the degree of autism. They had a child with significant autism that needed like a group home setting that needed constant intervention or So yeah,
So those tensions can really...
Well, in death, that's what the media always portrays, that if a child dies, you see parents splitting up. We don't have that statistic, but I imagine it's rather high in those situations. It's those traumatic things that it can either bring people closer together or push them further apart. I love the current divorce rate. This is based on the CDC from 2000. Thought I read 2020, but it's 2.9 people per 1,000 get divorced. So I'd like to meet the 0.9 person. Are they 9/10 divorced, or are they?
Well, in the statistics they talk about California's not included
in that statistic
so
rate.
Off some.
45 states participated. The District of Columbia. They submitted data. But Indiana, California, Hawaii, New Mexico, and Minnesota were not counted. They didn't submit enough data. So obviously the rates are likely much higher, especially leaving out California in there. And they talk about the change in divorce rates over the years. We were just sitting here discussing some of this before we came on air, how it's changed over the years, that it's increased greatly since the 1960s, but apparently since 1990, there's been more of a downward trend with divorce. And we kind of wonder, is that more because people aren't always getting married? That they wait till they're older, that there's people that live together that don't get married, thus
I think if I remember, I read, and I don't think it was here, but that millennials are less likely, that there's less of a trend of marriage with millennials. So I that may play into it. I thought it was interesting, the 50 and over rate was higher.
Yeah, we were talking about that they say the divorce rate is rising from those ages 50 plus. And what I was saying was people often wait till their kids are older to get that divorce. And I'm wondering if it's not that more people are feeling empowered, especially women, to realize, okay, this isn't working, rather than stick it out. I know I had a friend in college and her parents were married, but they did not really exist together. They lived in the same house, but that kind of situation where people would just stay in a difficult marriage. So I'm wondering, is this partly women's empowerment? Not that there aren't issues for men as well, but deciding, okay, this is not working for us, we're going to...
Well, I think, too, it's more accepted now.
Sure. Well, it's so common.
And those that are of our age really grew up at a time when it wasn't as accepted, so that their parents probably didn't get divorced, even though maybe they needed to. And so that kind of mindset gets clicked in. And now it's opening up more, where it's...
Depending on your religious background.
Well, yeah.
Your cultural background. Obviously, we're talking about the United States statistics here. We haven't even looked at things for other countries. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
This was a very interesting statistic. People are 75% more likely to end their marriage if they have a friend that's divorced.
Wow, that would be...
75% more likely. And I was joking at the beginning of the podcast, but we did go through a period of time where we had people we loved hanging out with, and then they got divorced. We had this couple we connected with through therapy, and we loved getting together with them, and then they got divorced. And there was a couple other different people since
neighbors.
That time that, that didn't happen until after they left here.
Well, yeah, but still, it's just...
But it just, you kind of get the sense that, wow, you hang out with us.
We're the cause? I don't think we're the cause, but...
So would it be true that if your friends stay married, are you more likely to remain married?
Are we in that, 25% mode? 75% more.
I guess it's... How long have we been married?
We're on 27 years, I think.
28.
Are we? It'll be 28 coming up, or are already on 28? I usually keep up with that. Why?
94.
You're the one that usually doesn't remember. No,
Well, it's
That's good.
easier numbers because I moved here 2 years before we got married. So I'm at my 30-year anniversary for moving here. So that means 28 years. Gonna start a what?
No, I'm
A
just
fight?
we're gonna start an argument here or something, No.
That's how I remember.
No, it's good. I always just think about because it's anyway.
Well, you've got me wondering. What is it you
No,
think about?
My
Brain went
path
blank.
was not going the right direction, so
You had a thought, and the train just
it just left the station without me.
station. Another statistic is that education may impact divorce rates. The average marriage failure rate varies depending on each spouse's level of education. 78% of women with a bachelor's degree who married for the first time in 2006 to 2010 can expect their marriage to last for at least 20 years. In contrast, 49% of women with some college education and 40% of women with a high school diploma or less can expect their marriage to last the same period. That doesn't make any sense.
I like how they have it's almost like they have guarantees. So
well,
if you do this, you guaranteed 20 years.
They're not. Oh, okay. So the percentage is much lower. That's what it is. 78% of women with a bachelor's degree or more, and only 49% of people with less education than a bachelor's degree. I wasn't paying attention to those percentages. Have that same chance of a marriage lasting 20 years. So that's something that my college education was worthwhile for. I got my marriage to go for more than 20 years. Thank you, Elizabethtown.
I wonder what the percentage of them that, some of my relatives made it 50, 60, 70 years married. How do you do that?
You don't get divorced. It's simple numbers. My parents are at 57. They got married in 1965. I had a patient recently who said he'd been married 57 years. I said, "Oh, you got married in 1965."
I think my parents made it before my dad passed. They were at about 54. I remember they did their. No, wait a minute. No, it wasn't that.
How old was your father when he died?
No, that's true.
How old was your father when he died?
No, I'm thinking of their 25th anniversary. They had a big celebration, and for some reason I marked it as the 50th, but it's the 25th, so it had been about 29 years.
Yes, because your father
my dad
was
died at
55
or 56.
Yes, so yeah, he did not get married a year before he was born.
Certain cultures, I don't know.
But now they're both left the earthly plane, so does that mean they're together again?
So.
In the spiritual plane? Are they,
dang it, the luck, Dean.
Can you find other people when you leave this earth? I don't know. These statistics do talk about, compared to the rest of the world, it says U.S. divorce rates are higher than those of other continents. Okay, we're not an entire continent, but where did these statistics come from, Don?
It's a list. There's a variety.
Somebody compiled a list from a number of different
CDC
sources. The U.S. has one of the highest crude divorce rates in the world. So we have the most crude divorces. I think it's
curse themselves.
I think it's just the
cursing in court.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what that means. What's your education level?
I made it 20 years, and I got a bachelor's.
I guess. Are you the same man I married? When they restarted your heart, did somebody else jump in there?
Oh, we're not going to that show now. All right.
So, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love, we have couples that are going to be coming on that we're going to interview have gone through a collaborative divorce process, right? So these people that we've spoken with, Ashley Nicole, she, her mission is to change how divorce is looked at, that it's done in a more collaborative way, that it's done with mediation and working together, realizing, okay, our relationship doesn't work. We can't live under the same roof. How can we dissolve this and keep the kids' best interests high on priority and still be able to parent those children, because I know that it's got to add a whole nother level. I mean, I know I have friends that have been through divorce and juggling the kids and the issues with the spouse. And
well, the question too is, is there a way, or is there something we should be doing in setting up marriages in the first place?
They mention about, getting married later. I don't know if there's enough data on that, but how much that might affect divorce rates if you're...
Like 10 o'clock versus 8:30?
Well, we got married at 10, so what does that say? Not by choice, because the priest we picked was squeezing us in. Well, we had to fire the first priest who was going to marry us because we didn't like. He had too many rules and
he'd never
limitations.
Been the priest that married us was married.
He actually was ordained in the Episcopal Church and then
was allowed
converted to Catholic.
And his wife and 7 kids to stay a priest, which was interesting. But he related. He could relate. That's what I always thought.
This is true. Well, yeah, the other guy was a younger guy, and I don't know. We went to our marriage encounter weekend engaged encounter weekend that the Catholic Church required, and the wonderful priest there told us to fire our priest. And so we listened to him and found a new one. So he had to squeeze us in to the time slot.
The ending. Or do you want?
I had something
else
more
to
say.
Okay,
but now I've lost my train of thought. I'm talking about the age of getting married. The statistics mention that getting married after 28, as far as the statistics, and maybe that's...
We did pretty good with that one, because I was 30. Well, you were 24?
I was 24. I was 28 when our first child was born.
35.
But you were 35.
So that I pulled us into the better.
And there's a funny story. When I called my mom to tell her, I was living in Charlotte here, and my parents were back in Pennsylvania at the time, and I guess when I first told them about dating you, I'm dating this guy. He's older, Mom. Oh, he's older? Has he been married before? No. Check.
Is he available?
Does he have any children? No. Check. Had you been married and divorced, and that would have complicated.
Were those the only questions, or did they throw in some other?
I think that's what I remember.
Whenever I dated somebody, my first question always was, are they available? And I would always tell my mom, yes, in 6 colors.
Worried you're dating unavailable women.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we'd love to hear from you. We hope you join us on our upcoming podcast. Share this information with friends who might be either in the middle looking at divorce or having gone through it and wanting better ways to parent through this difficult process. So that's our podcast for today. We'd love to hear from you. Be sure to leave us a comment, give us feedback on the podcast. And if you like more what you hear about Don and I, you can learn more about our coaching program. And we do workshops for any parents, whether you're single, divorced, or married.
And we'll talk about our long relationship, our long marriage.
Okay. Right now?
If they want to talk, we'll be happy to talk with them.
Yes.
Show them all the great...
Just keep listening to the podcast, and you'll be part of our long marriage as we share all our different stories throughout the years. So follow us at focusedhealthyfamily.com. Follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. Follow me. Don's getting older. Just follow me. And Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family.
Remember, I pulled us into the better part of this because of my got married later.
So that's why our marriages lasted. Because you were 35 when we got married. Thank you for being here. And no matter your marital state, remember that how you speak to your children shapes their future.